Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Mike Beer. The feature race at Saratoga on Wednesday is the John's Call. Carded as race number 9, a mile and 5/8 on the Mellon Turf Course. $135,000 is the purse. Let's take a look at this field. The John's Call is a restricted race for older horses, which have not won a graded turf race in 2022. As you can see by the morning line, it's a wide open affair. The 3 Tide of the Sea has plenty of back races, Mike, that make him interesting. Second off the Tom Worley claim, and you could probably throw out his last 2 races.
Yeah, I guess you probably can. In particular, the last one, first off, the claim for Morley, which got rained off to the main track. He actually didn't even run that poorly in there. I guess he's the horse to beat. I don't know that I would necessarily want to take the 2-1, hoping that he shows up with one of his really good races here. If he shows up with one of those, he probably wins. I don't know. I thought there were other horses that were more interesting at perhaps better prices.
His glaring advantage is probably his speed. As we take a look at the Timeform US pace projector, this race shouldn't be run at a very fast clip, and Tide of the Sea has at least shown some speed in the past. He's likely to get to the front under Javier Castellano. Hieroglyphics, who we expect to be second on the pace projector, came from way out of it in a fast-paced race last time out at Monmouth. I guess he could be up close, but Tide of the Sea does figure to control things.
Yeah, he's got the best speed in the race. He probably, if everybody shows up with their best performance, he probably has the best race too. I guess that makes him double tough. His recent form isn't great, Dan, but he's pretty good on his best day.
I would like to note, though, that the number 5 Saad doesn't have a chiclet on the pace projector because for most of his career he was in France. He ran one race at Great Meadow on the flat and 2 hurdles races. Maybe he could be close to the pace, and that would give him a big chance as well. Let's start things off with one of the Michael Maker train runners, the number 1 Girl Dad. This is Maker off the claim. It's been an angle that has worked consistently over the years, especially when he stretches them out on the turf. And we'll talk about Girl Dad's most recent race, a condition claiming event where he was just sort of raided all the way back to the pack by Joel Rosario. And I understand that the pace was very fast up front, but there was no way he could win with that kind of trip, just sort of last on the rail. It looked like for a brief second he was going to fire, and then almost as soon as he started running, it seemed like he flattened out again.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't get a great trip. You're right about that. They rated him first time through the stretch. Then he just started to get shuffled back, and he lost a lot more position. At the end of the race, to me, he was just sort of racing on along with everybody else, and it never really looked like he was going to win. Listen, we've talked about Maker a lot. He claims these horses, he stretches them out. They seem to get a lot better when he does that. Even if that was the case with Girl Dad, I still don't think I would be interested. I just don't think this horse is good enough. And just from reading Dave Grunning's advance on the race, doesn't sound like this was Maker's plan. He didn't really want to run him with this horse in here. He had a 50 claimer picked out. It didn't fill. They needed some help filling this race, so Maker entered Girl Dad. At least that's what he says. If he's in here, to really run in this kind of a race, maybe he'll do better. I can't bet him, Dan.
Bluegrass Parkway, the number 2, a stakes winner going 1.25 miles last year at Ellis Park, is making his 3rd start of the year, and I think the question has to be asked after watching his first 2 starts in some tough spots, whether he's as good this year as he was in 2021. His most recent start in 2021, his final start of 2021, the 8 Challenge Jerkins, you can forgive that race. That was just a merry-go-round where they ran 1, 2, 3 around the track, and he tried to rally from out of it. If you want to say the race at Belmont off the layoff he needed against a sharp horse, fine. And last time he was against a good field. Red Knight is in very good form and has some class as well. So there are some angles for this Maker trainee.
Yeah, definitely there are. And he's the horse, to me, the distance is fine for him. I do think, though, he's at his best when they just sort of take him back and let him make one run. And I don't know how well that's going to work out for him in here. His most recent start, as you mentioned, Dan, which was against a good field at Colonial, they tried to get him a little closer to the pace there. They put him right up close in that race. It didn't really work out that well for him. He didn't have his typical good finish with that kind of a running style. I think he's better when they take him back and make one run.
Tide of the Sea, the number 3, we talked about him as a potential pace setter for Tom Morley. He's a graded stakes winner at 1.5 miles. He won the 2021 W.L. McKnight at Gulfstream. You mentioned the dirt race last time out. And the race before that, I just don't think he handles yielding going at all. He was in against Soldier Rising, was very sharp, came back to run second in a stake with a 91, just won a 3rd level allowance with a 97 buyer. And his pace edge gives him a strong advantage. He has plenty of back races. He's the horse to beat, but I agree with you. I'm not sure if he has such an edge that I want to take 2-1 or less.
Yeah, I don't really either, but I do recognize him as the horse to beat. And you're 100% correct about the excuses for his last two starts. He does not like yielding turf, and he just got stuck really wide all the way around the track in that race 2 starts back. Last time, again, he actually ran pretty well in there, Dan. They put him on the lead on the main track. He actually took a ton of pressure up the backstretch and around the turn that race. He fought on really gamely. He actually, it feels like maybe he did take a little bit of a step forward first off the claim for Morley.
Ocean's Map's run 4 times this year, but this is the first time he's getting an opportunity to really stretch his legs out around a distance of ground. And he was a stakes winner last summer at Delaware going 1.5 miles. Let's watch his last start at Monmouth, a third level allowance going 1.1 miles. It was a race in which he got a fast pace. He's on the outside. He's going to come with a run, and he's going to finish second to the favorite. I think it was a good performance for him. He got that buyer back up to a co-career best 90. I just have a feeling he's coming into this race in good form, and he has done well in the distance in the past. I just think this race didn't come up very tough for him.
Can't argue with any of that. He ran fine last time against a horse who's in really good form and was on the lead all the way in there, and Ocean's Map just couldn't get to him. He ran fine in that race. I suppose that stretching back out really works to this horse's advantage, and you're right, Dan. He just lands in a race where he probably just, if he shows up with one of his good races, he can be right there.
The number 5, Saad, stakes place stayer overseas, came over to the States. They ran him in a little flat stake at Great Meadow. He was the favorite that day. He got close to the pace and he won. It was not the greatest field in the world. The 5th place horse came back to run third in a second level allowance at Laurel with an 83 buyer. They tried him over the jumps. It just hasn't worked out for him. But I think this is an interesting spot for him to get back going, a longer distance race on the turf.
Yeah, I do too. According to his trainer, he just didn't handle the jumps at all. He races way too keenly and doesn't handle the hurdles, so they have to come back to the main track with him. His form in France was good. I mean, he's not a group horse. They tried him in a couple of group races, and he's just not good enough to win races like that. But when they dropped him back a little listed stake in an allowance race towards the middle of last year, he ran really well in both of those races, Dan. This distance is no problem for him. He's got a little tactical speed. There are things to like.
Hieroglyphics completes this field. He was hard to decipher last time out, an 11-1 in a claiming race at Monmouth. Let's take a look at that race. Boy, he got a setup. They went fast and furious up front, 46-2, 110-1 in this 1.125 race. Hieroglyphics settled off of it. He came with a run. He just dominated this field. This is a huge step up in class. This is a huge step up in distance. Maybe he'll be closer to the pace, stretching all the way out. He was actually only 8-1 in the 2020 Alan Jerkins.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this horse has a good amount of back class. His recent form has left a lot to be desired. He did take advantage there and get back to one of his good races. I mean, I've always liked this horse. I've never really thought that he would get better with more distance, though, Dan, and his recent form just doesn't really make him competitive against this field.
Top pick time for the John's Call at the Spa on Wednesday, going 1.5 miles on the turf. You're going with Saad. He is the X factor. He has shown tactical speed in slower paced races, and he's not exposed like some of the others in this race. I'm going Ocean's Map. Talk a little bit about what price you would take on Saad.
If he's around his morning line, I'll bet him in this race. I just didn't want to default to the favorite in this race. It's just the more I looked at it, the less I wanted to take a short price on Tie to the Sea. I get that he could wire the field here. I wanted the most interesting alternative, and I think it's Saad, a horse who I can make a reasonable case for, and I think he's going to be a fair price.
The Tie to the Sea, the horse to catch and beat, will try to beat him. I'll go Ocean's Map, who I think is slowly rounding back into his best form and getting an opportunity to stretch out to a good distance for him. Fun edition of the John's Call. 5324 for Mike, 4621 for me. Good luck.